or a bomb technician, and he does some things on Fox Nation as well. I hear there's a little hunting in some of your futures if you're lucky with Johnny. David Cantonese, we're going to get to that because he tweeted this moment. Biden hugs Bernie, Klobuchar, and I like Bernie just fine. Nobody even mentioned Hillary, a striking absence of the 2016 Democratic nominee through this whole primary. Why is that important? It's Hillary.
Hillary Clinton did beat Donald Trump by 3 million votes in 2016. That got her a set of steak knives in a concession speech, of course. Doesn't mean a lot. She also was on Ellen this week and was talking about how Ellen asked her, would you consider being asked vice president? She said, well, never say never.
Well, Hillary has said never say never since that night she couldn't come out of her hotel room and left Lanny Davis to come out and give a speech for her.
Well, I think it begs the question, is there still a Clinton demographic within the Democratic Party? It seems like the party itself is struggling really bad to understand who it is in general. With the candidates that are there, we were sitting there in the first 5 minutes and we're talking about how Buttigieg is maybe pulling from Biden and Warren's all but dead because of Bernie, and so you have two factions and where everyone's fallen in. Is there still a Hillary Clinton, conservative Midwesterner that's out there? I don't know.
I think it's hard if you lose an election to still have a constituency within a party. Look no further than Mitt Romney and how he went from party's nominee to 4 years later to now being really on the outs with the GOP. If you are somebody who wins, if you put a W on the board, people in your party will love you. And I think Hillary Clinton wasn't able to do that for Democrats. They're really trying to grapple with how to move forward. And I think that's why you saw tonight a lot of folks sort of trying to make their distance. I want to turn the page, figuring out, I want to look forward.
All right, so now that we've gotten the Clinton mystique, as it is, off the table, let's go to the other thing that's not so much of a mystery, and I'm going to start this off. We've got a lot of analysis to do, but this moment says a lot, and look who we're talking to in the Fox Nation fan base here. This is the question about having a Democratic socialist at the top of the Democratic ticket. This is a potential problem for them. Let's play this.
Is anyone else on the stage concerned about having a Democratic socialist at the top of the Democratic ticket?
I'm not.
I mean, come on, Amy raises her hand. She's a little concerned, the Klobuchar factor. I'll go to you, Kristen.
A lot of people on that stage were thinking it, but were too cowardly to put their hands up. You have seen the very public panic that the Democratic establishment is having about the rise of Bernie Sanders. As he surged in the polls there late in Iowa, a lot of folks saying, hey, wait a minute, we have not yet deployed our opposition research, our attacks on him effectively yet. And look, now he's able to really gain momentum. And in the same way, looking backwards, Republicans tried to figure out how do we stop the Trump train and were unable to do so in 2016. I think Democrats are worried that they're seeing their own repeat of that now. And they're also well aware of the fact that on the one hand, when you ask, or frankly, when you ask people, would you be comfortable with a socialist president, the vast majority of Americans say no. And Bernie Sanders has really been comfortable wrapping himself in that label. I think it's possible that Bernie Sanders could get elected president, but I think the fact that he has embraced the label of socialism has the potential to really hurt him.
All right, so Mr. Media Reporter over there, Joe Concha. Think about the media markets. This is really a Boston media market. You've got Warren, a Massachusetts senator. You've got Bernie to the north, and New Hampshire and Manchester, of course, in the middle where they were tonight. So seemed like they were going after Sanders in the beginning quite a bit. To Kristen's point, are they afraid of Bernie?
They should be petrified of Bernie Sanders because Donald Trump is very good at making arguments in very broad strokes. Right, make America great again, and I will build a great wall. Like very easy things to absorb, right? Like Joe Biden actually was very good at that in 2012. Bin Laden is dead and GM is alive. To go into nuance, that doesn't work well in campaigns, right? But here's the thing, Bernie Sanders is getting a pass right now from almost every moderator that we've seen in all of these debates. Will someone ask him? It's a pretty simple question. How much are you going to raise taxes on the middle class to pay for the Green New Deal and pay for Medicare for all and for free college? Can someone ask that question? Because I'm pretty sure in the general election, Donald Trump will hammer him on that. Your taxes are going up. And the last time that happened, guys, Walter Mondale, 1984, he won one state.
All right, so Joey, you've been talking about this a lot, about Bernie never answers the question, but actually,
never asked the question.
Well, nobody asks it, but doesn't he kind of answer it by never answering the question?
Well, I think his answer is it doesn't matter, or the redistribution of wealth is what's most important. We'll see whether it does sells. But I would say that Joe Biden had the best attack of Bernie Sanders' policies tonight, and Amy Klobuchar had the best defense against them. And so to where Joe Biden was angry and, as you distinctly pointed out, loud, Amy Klobuchar had probably the best night she's had in this campaign. It's just 3.5 months too late.
Yeah, I think they turned Biden's mic up tonight. He seemed a little too overpronounced, if you will.
Well, to reference what Joey was just saying, what I tweeted out and what you're complimenting, thank you, by the way, I never get compliments, particularly at home, is that Biden mistakes volume for passion, right? And the
Volume doesn't mean conviction.
It
Is that what you're saying?
No, the person that made the best arguments in politics, I think, was actually a pundit that was on this network on Fox News. It was Charles Krauthammer. Never had to raise his voice. And when you got done listening, you were like, yeah. He's right.
He made you think.
Made you think.
He
made yell to do it, Dave.
That's a fair point. So let's usually go to this at the end, but we got initial reactions out there from social media, different things. I had a little fun tweeting. All right, so let's take a look at the broad strokes on this. What was your first thought when this debate started, Joey?
Well, I wanted to see if Joe Biden was going to fight for his campaign or concede, and if Pete Buttigieg was going to establish himself as for real or continue kind of where he's been with this. Well, it depends on which moment, if he's going to, stagger progressive or stay Midwestern. And I came away from this debate really thinking that Bernie's for real.
Yeah, I kept thinking back to the New Hampshire debate 4 years ago when this was the moment where Marco Rubio came in third in Iowa, tried to take that momentum and go into New Hampshire in a strong position, and Chris Christie took a sledgehammer to him. That was the infamous Barack Obama knows exactly what he's doing over and over and over moment, and that was kind of the end of Marco Rubio's career. So I thought, they've been playing kind of nice up until this point. Iowa's done. We're into New Hampshire. The gloves are going to come off. And I actually don't think anyone landed an effective punch on Bernie Sanders, which means he effectively, in my book, won.
Yeah.
So, Joe?
That's exactly right. I love that moment with Rubio and Christie, or moments, I should say, because Christie, you said he hammered him. He was the Jack Ruby of 2012. Like, okay, just send somebody out to take that guy out. You're going to sacrifice yourself, too, because Christie was done after that as well.
There's a reference we never thought we'd hear in a debate reference.
Yeah. That one took me a minute.
Yeah, well, for the intellectual and the historical, that fits.
Yeah.
All right, let's stick on Biden for a moment. And this is for Joey, because I know some of these things really trigger you, and, we trigger a lot of people on Fox Nation. But Joe Biden talking about Rush Limbaugh. Now, that was a big moment at the State of the Union. The president recognizing Rush, someone who was certainly in my industry and talk radio as well, has revolutionized media, conservative thought, conservative talk. And he always said it was the Rush Limbaugh show. But here's what Joe Biden had to say about that moment when the president gave him the Medal of Freedom and Melania pinned it on him.
He should be pinning a medal on Vindman and not on Rush Limbaugh. And I think what we should be doing now, I think we should all stand and give Colonel Vindman a show of how much we supported him. Stand up and clap for Vindman. Get up there.
Joey?
It's a little bit reminiscent of Please Clap, isn't it? With Jeb, this is a good point. You should know this is a good point. You better believe this is a good point. I found it a little bit ironic, and I saw someone tweet, it might have been Dana Lash. You're talking about giving an active duty service member the one medal that's reserved for civilians. So there's a little bit of the Vice President of the United States should understand this probably more than anyone. But really the point there is just it's further division is what it is. I didn't think that even Rush Limbaugh could convince Democratic presidential candidates to take the side of cancer, and that's what it feels like. To hell with with Rush Limbaugh's misfortune. When someone has been such a strong voice, you can be in support of that person fighting for their lives, and then they want to sit back and point their finger at Trump and say that he's uncouth and says too much and crosses the line at the prayer breakfast. Well, look at how you're treating the Rush Limbaugh receiving the Medal of Freedom for basically being a strong voice even when it was difficult.
Joe, I know you and Rush just, sit around and talk a lot about these things.
I never met the man. Don't get down to Florida very much. Right, but look, he has stage 4 lung cancer. There is no stage 5.
Yeah.
And to attack Rush Limbaugh, you can disagree with him. Clearly you're a Democrat, you don't like him. I get that completely, but where's the humanity?
Yeah.
Right, where you have to avoid, why'd you give that guy a medal? I don't know. He's a friend. Just like Ellen was a friend of Obama when she got the Medal of Freedom. It looks bad. They look petty.
Yeah.
They don't look optimistic. Amy Klobuchar was the only person on that stage tonight that seemed to have optimism, right? And I think that she won this debate ultimately because she was very articulate. I wish she got more speaking time. That was interesting, right?
Yeah, let's look at the breakdown on that.
Andrew Yang, I swear to God, when the Yang gang on social media says that he gets screwed at every turn, he really does.
Yeah, I remember
He
you
got half
actually
the speaking time of
explaining-
Tom Steyer, and he's polling higher than Steyer. What is going on?
I feel that there's a lot of passion in Joe on this, Kristen, because I remember the moment Yang spoke for the first time. I don't know how long the debate. You actually, Andrew Yang's there? I mean, really?
Well, and I think Andrew Yang often makes a point that I think Democrats are unfortunately not wise enough to understand, which is if they keep going out there and making their message about how terrible Donald Trump is, they're missing a big opportunity. And so you can see it in this whole example of the Joe Biden saying we should put the medal on Vindman instead of Rush Limbaugh moment, because regardless of how you feel about Rush Limbaugh, this is sort of bringing up memories of the impeachment saga yet again, which is something that Democrats are unified on. You're not going to win over new Democratic voters by saying, no, I really supported impeaching Donald Trump. Instead, it's bringing up something that actually wasn't politically advantageous in the end for Democrats. Ultimately, the president's job approval is about where it was before it started, if not a little higher, depending on what poll you're looking at. So going back to talk further about impeachment, I think is just from a political strategy point of view to make that your big moment.
They're still beating the impeachment horse, but before
one point on what Kristen
real
just
quick,
said, by the way. Impeachment in terms of Trump's poll numbers haven't gone up a little bit. In Gallup, he's up 10 points since October. He's at 49%. You know where Obama was at this stage of his presidency? 45. Beat Romney very easily. Just saying.
Just
Right?
saying.
This thing is very much
just
benefiting.
saying. All right. By the way, here's Andrew Yang, who, when he does get his moments, can deliver a good punchline. Here he is on Trump being the symptom.
Donald Trump is not the cause of all of our problems, and we're making a mistake when we act like he is.
That's right.
He is a symptom of a disease that has been building up in our communities for years and decades.
Joey, Donald Trump came down the escalator, said they're not working for you. A couple months ago, he put out this meme, or I forget where the meme originated, but I think he did put it out, and it said, "I'm just in the way. They're after you." So Andrew Yang says he's the symptom. Is it the people or is it Donald Trump?
Well, Andrew Yang's made this point in every debate he's been lucky enough to be in and actually get a word edgewise. And he said Donald Trump isn't the root to our problems, he's a symptom, but we can attack the problem without attacking Donald Trump. And to think about that is absolutely true. And it's true for them, and it's true in fact that Donald Trump is not the problem that they have. They have a problem with capitalism. They have a problem with how our country was created and evolves, and the Second Amendment and things of that nature, and the right to life. That's what they have a problem with. Donald Trump's just the vessel at this moment, and he's a damn good one. And so Andrew Yang understands that, but when you can't attack Trump on economy, and you can't attack him on defense, and you can't attack him through impeachment, and maybe health care, and they shot that round early on, you just got to attack the man for who he is. But Greg Gutfeld said it best, and I've made this point every time I've gone on TV.
Oh,
and
Greg
talked about
Gutfeld
it.
reference.
Well, it's true. Trump won by bypassing this litmus test of character that every politician pretends to take. You're not going to beat Donald Trump by proving he's exactly who you voted for. He's the person you thought he was. And Yang understands that. The Democratic Party does not.
Fundamentally, in order to get people to feel good about the way things are going in the country, they have to believe that if you work hard and play by the rules, you can get ahead. And not just believe it, but they have to feel it in their own lives, and Americans weren't. And so Donald Trump was somebody who they felt, enough Americans in enough states to put together an electoral college majority, felt that he was the way that somebody who works hard and plays by the rules can get ahead in America again. And so for Democrats to sort of say it's all about Trump, sort of makes it sound like all these problems just started on January 2017, and in fact they didn't. And that's why Yang is so smart to talk about how these are things that have been troubling Americans for a long time. Yeah. And frankly, if you just make it about Trump, it's going to sound not quite resonant, because in that same Gallup poll that you mentioned, Joe, Americans have a higher rating of their own personal economic situation than at any point since Gallup has been asking that question, and that goes back to the 1970s.
All right, so let's look at something recent.
90% of people are happy with their lives. Well, my
Right.
friends complain all the time, so there must be in the other 10.
And then you look at the economy, and somebody during the debate, it might have been Steyer, brought up, it's the economy, stupid, referencing Clinton back in the 90s. We've just seen jobs numbers, labor participation rates, Joe, that are growing. So the media narrative is it sucks under Trump. But to Kristen's point, the reality is people are looking at their paychecks, their wallets, and their potential for a better future.
Yeah, wages up 3.1%, right? You see the jobs when you break it down, the 250,000 that were added, nearly 50,000 in construction, right? And I see that out in Jersey.
Types of jobs.
Yes, exactly. So these are blue-collar jobs. It's not like it's the white-collar Wall Street. Those are the people who are only
We
getting
didn't
those
hire
jobs.
225,000 people didn't get hired on Wall Street.
Right.
Not last month.
That didn't happen. And then Steyer's saying, no, the only way we're going to beat him is to hit him on the economy. Good luck with that. Boy, he got a lot of speaking time tonight. He's the Jar Jar Binks of this party. Shouldn't even been on that stage. Why wasn't Tulsi Gabbard there, by the way?
The one weakness that I do think exists for Donald Trump when it comes to the economy is on people's fears that even though things are good today, what will they look like tomorrow? And it's not necessarily Donald Trump's fault.
But do they really
2008
wake up and
talking.
think
But it's
about
2008 talking. It's the scars of the financial crisis where people remember that one day their 401k looked good and the next day Bear Stearns was gone. And they remember what they felt like. And so when I do focus groups around the country, people will talk about, man, I see lots of homes and apartment buildings being constructed in my community. I think that's a good thing. But they also remember that right after the financial crisis, there were a lot of houses and apartment buildings that sat vacant for a long time. And it's that sense of things are good now, but I worry about tomorrow. And a lot of the things Democrats are proposing are very disruptive to the economy, to the healthcare system, et cetera. In 2016, people were looking for disruption. I'm not so sure that they're looking for disruption in quite the same way now. I think disruption could be more of a downside risk than an upside risk.
All right. By the way, there's a guy we're going to get to later. I just like to tease him because there's a Kilroy of politics here in Mike Bloomberg. They eventually got around to him.
What does that mean? The Kilroy of politics. I don't know.
Peering around the corner. Remember Kilroy, World War I? Was that World War? Yeah, World War I.
I wasn't around.
Oh, okay. It's a historical reference.
My war's
You
really
youngsters out here. Anyway, do I have to explain the Kilroy of politics to everyone? Kilroy, the big nose peering over, just he's in the wings. Nobody gets this.
Isn't there a reference that there's a Styx song where at the end he says, I am Kilroy?
Yes.
Anyhow,
Anyway,
I'm trying.
She's trying to help me out.
What sticks?
Well, I can't help you on that.
All right, Mr. Media.
STYX, I know.
All right.
You're too far
We're
gone.
supposed to have a little bit of fun here, right? All right. So
Vaccination.
they had to go after each other at some point. And Pete Buttigieg, or as president would say, Buttigieg, and Amy Klobuchar decided to go after each other. We've got to touch on this because impeachment just ended. Well, round one. We don't know what the next round looks like. But here's Klobuchar and Pete Buttigieg, and she doesn't seem to be a big fan. Let's play this.
As three of us were jurors in that impeachment hearing, you said it was exhausting to watch and that you wanted to turn the channel and watch cartoons. I think this going after every single thing that people do because it's popular to say and makes you look like a cool newcomer. I don't think that's what people want right now. We have a newcomer in the White House, and look where it got us.
Wow. Effective, Joey?
That's the most disingenuous thing said on stage tonight because Amy Klobuchar didn't want to be sitting there listening to that for hours. She wanted to be campaigning. Pete's going to get attacked for being young and inexperienced. Well,
doing well in Iowa.
Well, and let me tell you, for the majority of Americans that weren't in and around Chicago, we had a president that was a community organizer that felt young and inexperienced, and people latched onto that. So I don't know if they're afraid of that or if they really believe attacking it will be helpful, but the American people aren't going to be swayed by young or inexperienced because in 2020, inexperience means corruption. It means the swamp. I mean, that, if anything, that Trump has put out there has resonated with everyone.
All right, so Kristen, the swamp, corruption, the longtime politicians. Let's look at the stage. Biden, Bernie, Steyer, Warren. I'm not an ageist, but these are people in advanced years. And look, Trump, to be fair, also up there. So how do they run on this new young future of the Democrat Party?
Well, Bernie Sanders, of all the people up there, has that figured out far better than anybody else there. Bernie Sanders' support is frankly pretty lopsided toward the young wing of the Democratic Party. Polling before Iowa had him up 50% among young voters, with Joe Biden only getting 3% among young voters. But if Bernie Sanders' coalition is very condensed and just among sort of young progressives,
which tend to not go out and vote in high numbers.
Well, I mean, it worked for him in Iowa, and he was able to sort of figure out, these satellite caucuses. How can I get the most bang for my buck in terms of delegates? But in contests that are less sort of arduous to participate in than the Iowa caucuses, he's going to need a bit more of a diverse base. And that's why you saw Joe Biden tonight. I mean, he frankly conceded defeat in the first couple of minutes, that he doesn't think he's going to win New Hampshire or even come in second or even come in third.
So is he
But he's
setting
going
up
on to-
expectations
He is setting
then?
up expectations so he can go on to South Carolina. That's where he's
All
going
right,
to
Joe. So let me get Joe, the other Joe, Joey and Joe, on the end here. Concha. We'll just go with Concha. So back to that point, Biden, is he setting low expectations? Is he trying to make his way? What's he doing?
He's doing a Rudy Giuliani in 2008. Right? Just remember Rudy? Just get me to Florida, right? That's where my firewall is. And by the time we got to Florida, the firewall was gone.
Right.
So yeah, he's going to do poorly in New Hampshire, and he knows it. And then he goes to Nevada, and who knows how he's going to do there, because now he has no momentum. It's not like he's this magical candidate that can just turn it on like that. He evokes no confidence whatsoever whenever he speaks. And by the time he gets to South Carolina, maybe he holds on to that, but I'm not even sure anymore. He's a horrible candidate. He's run for president 3 times. He's never won a primary or a caucus, with 3 opportunities to do that. And it's not like, he's not a known name.
Yeah.
So I don't see a comeback for Biden. I think he's done.
June of 1987, first time he announced he was running for president.
Sticks had a big song out then. Sticks.
Yeah, you just can't help this guy. He's incorrigible.
It was more of a Bon Jovi time, actually.
To win the primary, though, you got to get the black vote. And Joe Biden and all of them have to compete. He claims, the greatest affinity of all the candidates and the greatest support. But let's go to Steyer, Biden, and Bernie. Which one of you guys said 3? I think Joey has to get the credit here. 3 old white guys arguing over how is it? How did you say it?
Well, just who black people like the most.
All right, let's play this one.
One of the leaders of Joe Biden's South Carolina campaign made racist remarks about someone associated with our campaign. And the legislative black caucus went out en masse to stand up for that man and for our campaign. I have more support in South Carolina in the black caucus and the black community than anybody else. Double what you have or anybody else has. But wait a second, Bernie. Well, that is quite right. Let's not argue about polls. This isn't about Bernie. This isn't about polls. I'm not this is not about polls. I'm not talking about polls.
We have 9 members of the black caucus in South Carolina supporting us.
Wow, they're trying to carve up black people and draw them in, Joey. Take it away.
Well, listen, God forbid we ever have a demographic called the dumb hillbillies from Appalachia, because I believe we're a little bit different than just from Appalachia or dumb or hillbillies, right? We go out and have jobs, we have different lifestyles, we do different things. I always cringe when anyone's arguing over the black vote, because that has nothing to do with the specific issues in their lives. And to have the optics of 3 old white men arguing over it, and then to back that up with Steyer talking about how they're the most diverse party, they're lost.
All right, Joe, go ahead.
You shouldn't be asking the questions. You should be answering the question here. And when you hear 3 people talk about black people like that, right, African Americans,
right,
and just it's just so pandering and presumptuous. I have more. No, I have more. Oh, I have the
exactly.
It's what do you?
So
how
are they
you make
trotting
people's
out
lives
their
better?
blacks? You hear the phrase "trotting out your blacks." Is that what this is?
And Joe threw in Brown, and stops there. What?
Right.
And Brown.
But by the way, does that bother you, David?
No, you know what? It doesn't bother me, but I'll throw my opinion in here, which is black people, just like anyone else, wake up thinking about what matters to them that day. Normal. This doesn't matter whether you're black, white, male, or female. And the assumption that blacks automatically fall into let's pick our blacks is not right. And what they don't like in the Democrat Party is that blacks aren't going that way anymore. The affinity with Democrats because of failures have pushed people to rightfully not necessarily become Republicans, but question their affiliation that their grandparents had or their parents had.
Well, and it's also the case that if you look at polling on questions about particularly social issues, on average, African-American Democrats are more conservative than the sort of white progressives that someone like Bernie Sanders has built his base on. And I think the reason you see Tom Steyer getting so animated right now about this issue is because South Carolina is also his firewall, where he knows, Democrats, and I don't think without reason, have criticized, hey, Iowa and New Hampshire as our first two states, these are not very racially and ethnically diverse states. A state like South Carolina,
black
a
in
state
Iowa,
like Nevada is
and
going to give a broader perspective of the full picture of the Democratic Party, kind of unlike what you see up on that debate stage. Tom Steyer came in second place in the latest Fox News poll in Nevada, and other subsequent polls that have come out after that have reinforced that Steyer, while he basically skipped the first two states, has really been trying to lay the groundwork there. That's his firewall for sure, and that's why he really wants to try to chip away at Joe Biden's support.
All right, I hear we have a surprise sod here. I'll just call it that. This is Tom Steyer. Let's go to this one.
We have a very diverse party. The heart and soul of this party is diversity, black people, Latinos, AAPI people, Native Americans, and white people.
He got one in for the Asia Pacific Islander. As somebody who's heading out to Iwo Jima, it's nice to have them represented. I mean, but Joe, pandering 101 here.
Completely. I don't know.
Is there a
checklist?
checklist?
Nevada, Kristen, really? Mm-hmm. I find him to be a profoundly horrible candidate. When he speaks, it's just there's no optimism with him either. Now, by the way, he's a billionaire. It's funny how Bloomberg always gets attacked.
Who made his money in fossil fuels, among many other investment strategies.
You bring up Bloomberg and everybody's hair goes on fire, but with Steyer, for whatever reason, he doesn't get attacked.
So, Kristen, is it the right billionaire when you need him, and the wrong billionaire when it's someone else for the Democrats?
I think part of the reason why Steyer's doing so well in South Carolina is he's been in the organizing game for a long time. Yeah. He built an organization called Need to Impeach. He built a really big email list and had begun sitting down, doing town halls, meeting with voters, doing a lot of the legwork that frankly is a little different than what our other billionaire in the race, Mike Bloomberg, has done, where Mike Bloomberg is just throwing his money at the problem and trying to spin up an organization here a bit later. Now, Bloomberg also had his organizations around issues like guns, et cetera, that he's able to draw upon.
Right, it was at every town, USA.
That's right. But Steyer he'd built a big email list and was able to build organization in South Carolina while everybody else was hanging out in the cold states in Iowa and New Hampshire. He was building something in South Carolina. I don't think he'll win there, but he's definitely complicating the picture, especially for Joe Biden.
All right, now nobody got my Kilroy reference earlier, and I teased it, so mea culpa. Mea culpa. But here's Bloomberg finally getting in without being actually in the debate, but he will be in the debate in Nevada. Let's watch this.
A candidate who's not on the stage tonight, but it is in this race, and that is former Mayor Michael Bloomberg.
I don't think anyone ought to be able to buy their way into a nomination or to be president of the United States.
I just simply think people don't look at the guy in the White House and say, can we get someone richer?
I see the look on your. Go ahead, Joey.
Listen, my problem with Bloomberg has nothing to do with how much money he has or even how he gets on that debate stage. It's the fact that he ran as a Republican twice and then an independent. He's shifted policies left and right. He's obviously set these debates out to not have to answer some of these tough questions. And so my problem is, are the Democrats really going to let someone, with Trump, yeah, he supported certain policies, but he was a people pleaser for a career. He didn't run.
Well, he's a blue-collar billionaire because they got it.
Exactly.
He comes across that way.
So you might could say he flip-flopped in his 70s on issues, but as a politician, he's never flip-flopped. With Bloomberg in New York, I mean, come on. Like, the Democrats are going to let someone like that be in their race? I mean, at some point, take control of your party.
They are going to come for him with the big knives in the next debate, because ultimately all of those folks on stage tonight, with perhaps the exception of Bernie Sanders, who has identified himself as an independent socialist rather than a Democrat from time to time, they're all Democrats. And so they don't want to punch each other too hard because they're trying to hang on to one another's potential voters. Sure. Bloomberg, I think they're going to view him as an outsider, as someone who's trying to buy his way in, and that's it. And so you've got these news stories that pop up of Bloomberg courting Democratic donors, not because he needs the money, but just because he wants to say, don't give to anyone else. You hear these stories about the salaries he's paying his staff that are unbelievable.
Well, look,
for campaigns.
He's good for the economy. He's hired 800 people. He's buying ad time, and I've got, look.
But it ticks off other campaigns, and it's that little kind of stuff that's going to make their staff prep them to just knife it.
Let me bring Concha in on this, because let's go to the media component of this, Joe.
Can I talk about Bloomberg real quick?
Yeah, no, this is about Bloomberg, but I want to throw something in there and add a little context to this. Bloomberg's buying up digital. He's buying up ad time. You pre-buy these things in campaigns. You buy the media. So Bloomberg now also owns the media in the sense that he has bought up all this inventory.
Yeah.
That's dangerous for these Democrat candidates because what happens when they need that inventory?
They don't simply have the resources that he has, and it's great. He has his own news organization that literally declared that we will not report on Michael Bloomberg or any of the Democratic candidates. If we get any Oppo research, we'll reject it unless it's about Donald Trump. Then bring it, right? So basically, just that's destroyed there. Kristen is right. They will come out with the big knives. But I'm telling you, of all the candidates, Michael Bloomberg is the biggest threat to beat Donald Trump if he got the nomination. He has a record to run on here in New York. 3-term mayor. When he left, his approval rating was somewhere around 62%. Right? He did a good job here. Right? Everybody talks about the big sodas. Enough with the big sodas. He did a good job here. And then on top of that, the way he built his business, age 39, he built Bloomberg up from scratch. Didn't inherit it or anything like that.
No, he's got a story. He's got a story.
Absolutely.
That's fair.
And he's not as emotional as these other candidates, which I think they let.
But let's go back to your point for a minute, Joe.
Sorry, I didn't mean that gesture.
But the point of emotion is also a point of passion in politics, and you've got to get people's attention. And Trump gets your attention, whether you love him or hate him or somewhere in between. He gets your attention. You listen to him. Bloomberg doesn't seem to have that. He allocates capital well. Let's give him his credit, and he has a record in New York to run on. But he also had to get there with what? $250 million to become mayor 3 times.
Yeah.
So does he get that passion point? Does he draw people in?
That is the big question.
Yeah, and I'm much more bearish on Mike Bloomberg's chances of being president, in part because a lot of voters are maybe they're more fiscally they're more socially moderate, they're more middle of the road. But fiscally, they're not looking for a technocrat to take the wheel of government. They're not looking for somebody who's going to come in with an eye toward what can we cut here and there. Look, I would love for America to want a nerd president, setting aside the issue of whether Mike Bloomberg would in fact be a nerd president. But I think Bloomberg's sort of concoction of being socially progressive but fiscally conservative is actually not where very many voters are, and presents a massive vulnerability where Trump can go and just double down on his populist message and really run up the numbers and put together the exact same coalition of states he put together in 2016.
All right, let's go to national security. And in this sense, of course, recent announcement that we have yet another dead terrorist leader who committed al-Rimi, who committed enormous acts in Yemen, was planning other strikes around against American interests. They kill so many people. Then, of course, Soleimani. That was the big news during the impeachment trial. Joe Biden, let's play this because the question was, would he order the strike? And Joe Biden's been in D.C. for 44 years. Let's hear what he had to say.
As commander-in-chief, though, would you have ordered the strike?
No, and the reason I wouldn't have ordered the strike, there's no evidence yet of imminent threat that was going to come from him. Look what happened. His America First policy has made America alone. You cannot think of a time, David, in as long as you've been alive, when NATO has said to the United States of America and to Iran, made a moral equivalent, said, both of you stand down. We are alone now. This guy doesn't deserve to be commander-in-chief for one more day.
Let me throw a little context in here historically, because I guess I am the old guy who remembers Kilroy here. Biden went to the Soviet Union with Ben Cohen and told them that Reagan didn't want arms limitation talks. 36 years in the Senate, he's been on the wrong side of every foreign policy stance we've taken that's been major and successful. Many other examples. 8 years as vice president, he said, when it came to bin Laden, I wouldn't do the strike. So I'll go to you first, Joey. I mean, this is a guy who said he wouldn't strike Soleimani.
No, it's the least surprising thing that happened all night. Something that happened in these debates that was the first time I'd heard of it is he said that he was solely against the 40,000 troop surge in Afghanistan that Obama did, which was the only effective military action we ever took in Afghanistan, and then we relinquished it right back. And so I don't know where Joe Biden comes from. I don't know what angle he's trying to work. We already have a president who uses the term bring our troops home. So you're not going to win on that. You're not going to beat Trump on that, even though he really doesn't bring our troops home. So I don't know where Joe Biden's coming from here. He definitely talked out both sides of his mouth when it talked about foreign policy and defense tonight. But to go on stage and say, I wouldn't have killed Soleimani, they all said it because it's not what Trump did, and they're trying to draw a contrast.
So, Kristen, is this really, if Trump does it, we have to do the opposite?
There is no way they can stand on a debate stage in the Democratic primary and say something nice about Donald Trump, or say, I would have done this thing that Donald Trump did. And they've put themselves in a real bind, because I believe it was the last debate that they had was right in the midst of the Soleimani strike had just occurred. It really was a moment of uncertainty. We did not know how Iran was going to respond. We didn't know if it was going to escalate and become something worse. We are now a couple weeks past it, and we know it did not escalate into something worse. And now it's tough for them to have answers that really line up with the reality.
So, Joe, World War III didn't happen.
That's right, it didn't. Iran, U.S., right? That was only about a month ago, right? Boy, time flies. That's amazing. Look, I would say President Trump probably had his best week, which is amazing, right? Because
in the middle of an impeachment hearing.
He was acquitted for impeachment. He does a State of the Union address where at the end of it, CBS does a poll. They find that 82% of independents approved of the message, right? 97% of Republicans, a third of Democrats.
I was about to say it was in the high 30s for Democrats.
Yeah. So that's amazing, right? And then the Al-Qaeda leaders that you talked about being killed. And you can just go right down the list, the jobs report that came out today. So all these good things are happening. And then on the Democratic side, what was the main story?
Well, he also signed USMCA officially, so now...
Is that this week too?
Yeah, so when you add all these things together, are the Democrats having a good week or a bad week?
Well,
the worst week.
When the worst thing Trump has is a slight dip over a coronavirus, you know, I mean, I don't think they've quite blamed that on him yet. He's doing a really good job right now in this moment. This snapshot, in the age of information and iPhone, snapshots are all that matter. Polls that talk about November really mean nothing to me. I want to know what's happening today, because in November, that's what people are going to look at. And today, Trump's doing a good job. So tonight's debate is really bad timing for them, because there's not a lot they can attack him on, minus what they tried to at the beginning, which was health care, and we kind of talked about that in the green room. But they moved on from it really quickly, because they know they have about as many solutions that Democrat voters look at as Trump does right now.
All right, let's go to the social issues. That made it onto the stage as well. Think about this. You've got the president, first president to go to and speak to the March for Life. That was a big moment for him. Others have addressed it from the White House. But he went to the rally, and then he goes to the prayer breakfast. Roe v. Wade, another, social hot button, or some we call it political hot button, came up. Here's Warren on women's choice. Watch this.
3 out of every 4 people in America believe right now that the rule of Roe versus Wade should be the law. That means we should be pushing for a congressional solution as well. It is time to have a national law to protect the right of a woman's choice.
Is it a selling point for the Democrats, or is it just a hot button issue, Roe v. Wade?
I think it's table stakes for Democrats, that even if abortion is not the top issue or the second issue or even the 5th priority issue for most Democratic voters, you have to take a position that is pro-choice for most Democratic primary voters to even consider you. Now, does that mean that all Democratic voters hold that position? No, not at all. In fact, there was, I think, a pretty poignant moment with Pete Buttigieg being asked in Iowa by a pro-life Democrat, is there any room for me in the party? And he was very candid with her that, no, he's not going to try to win her over on this issue by moderating his position. There is a real divide in this country where political leaders have views of either abortion never at all or abortion in all cases. And for the most part, the polls show that
part
voters...
of the issue, because you've got extremes on this. Joe, extreme positions are where we seem to be on this.
Yeah, the polling, it's drastic, and Kristen knows this, but by doing this, when you're talking about first-term abortion, then it's basically split. When you get to third-term abortion, then it's something like in the teens in terms of people that support that. And most of the people up on that stage tonight would support a late-term abortion. So that'll be a hot-button issue. And once we get to the general, again, I would love to see a question from a moderator asking, do you support abortion after 30 weeks? I want to hear the answers, because it's going to come up in the general. So these moderators are doing a complete disservice by not asking those types of tough questions.
So did Trump put him in this position by going out, again, in the middle of all this going on, he goes to the rally, the March for Life. He goes and he has the prayer breakfast where he speaks, and he touched on other things. So has he put them in a position where they need to be extreme on it, or at least one-sided?
Well, I take a little bit different angle at this. There are certainly a lot of voters that care about pro-choice and pro-life. However, if you'll watch tonight, the way they invoked abortion was through the courts, and that's what they were talking about. And it evolved into a conversation about stacking the Supreme Court. Well, they probably realized that Donald Trump got voted into office with the promise of courts, and that's the biggest legacy he will have leaving office. And they understand that it can be a winning issue, because it was a winning issue for, candidate Trump that was much more spicy than he probably is even today among establishment Republican voters. And so I think it was a little bit more calculated of a talking point to get to the courts and to say this is an issue that we can pull those passionate people into and say, hey, we got to get a Democrat there, or abortion's going to be illegal because we need to stack the court or change the court or expand the court. And so I think that there's kind of a larger issue steaming there that may come out in the general election.
Well, I mean, when you look at that issue, it draws people into a lot of different points of views, but the extremes of this, I don't think it moves the ball forward for the Democrats at all. We've all talked about in the past, where does this move the actual base for the party? Where were the Democrats? So let's talk about what the Democrats could do to bring in independents for a minute. I'll go over to you, Mr. Concha. I'll use that.
Thank you.
How do the Democrats attract non-base voters? Because so far in the primaries, they're running to the primary base.
I don't know what anybody's message is at this point. With Donald Trump, I'm pretty sure I knew his message going in. Right, we're going to build this great big wall, and as far as regulations, we're going to get rid of those. And he ran on a very simple kind of concept. With these, like Joe Biden, I have no idea who this man is. After 40 years, I have no idea what pushes his sales at this point. Or any of the candidates that are up there, like, what's your theme? Yeah. What are you going to do to make the country better, my life better? I don't know what it is. So how do you appeal to independents? Normally you do that through the economy, and there's no lane there. What are you going to hit Trump on, the deficit?
All right, so Kristen, let me throw this in. Okay. Here's a number. New poll, Buttigieg lead in 25% over Sanders, 24%. Throw that in with this. How do they expand?
At one point, it's not a lead. One point is they're close enough there in New Hampshire. This is going to be a very interesting race to see which of them comes out on top. If Buttigieg wins in New Hampshire, then he is going to be the subject of a lot more fire from the rest of the field, because suddenly
but we've been saying that for how many debates now? That's finally they're going to open fire on each other?
Well, they did this time. I mean, Klobuchar tried. She tried. But I think when it comes to the earlier question that you asked about what is the message the Democrats could have to appeal to voters in the middle, you're absolutely right. Barack Obama, it was hope and change. You knew what it was. Donald Trump, it was make America great again. You knew what it was. With these Democrats, you don't really know what it is, except with Bernie Sanders. His message is, I'm for the 99%. I'm for you. I'm for making sure that everyone gets a fair shot, not just the people at the top. And I think that is, in fact, a message that the middle of America would like if it wasn't paired with, and by the way, to do it, we're going to have government take over the economy, take over the healthcare system. We're going to make sure that we're passing laws that say you can't drive your car anymore. Whatever the way that these policies Democrats support are going to wind up getting talked about in the general election, that's going to be the thing that hurts his chances. But overall, I'm for the 99% against the 1%. I do actually think there's a lot of an
disagree.
appetite for that.
Joey, let's get you. What is it? We need the Appalachia redneck hillbilly vote.
There we go.
Are there middle American Appalachia redneck? I like that. Appalachia redneck hillbillies. That might go with the Democrat. But seriously, what do you think?
Here's the problem. There's not a contrarian among them. There's not a Trump among them. The Trump is sitting on the outskirts, and that's Tulsi Gabbard. She's the closest thing to that. The person who's willing to say something that the establishment doesn't like, who's willing to say that the Democrat Party might be part of the problem, that's Tulsi Gabbard, and she's not invited to the party anymore. And they've made that abundantly clear. And so then you look at, okay, who's left, and it's Bernie Sanders, the person who's willing to say, I'm a socialist. I mean, you ask, hey, do you want to provide health care to illegal immigrants? And they all raise their hand because they're afraid to be the one that wasn't. You want to ask them, who doesn't want there to be a Democratic socialist at the top of the ticket? And Amy Klobuchar has a defining moment where she raises her hand, and Tom Steyer almost raises both hands because he doesn't know what he's doing. And so there just isn't someone there to be contrarian enough to garner people's attention. So then it falls back on issues, and they're not strong there unless you're Bernie Sanders and you're just going in a completely different direction.
Bernie's controlling this. All right, look, we're going to have lots more debates to go, so I don't think we're out of debates. And we're going to spend a lot of time on this panel in various configurations.
It feels like
I like
more
this.
debates than primaries or caucuses.
Exactly. I'm not sure. We should keep a track of that. Are there more debates, primaries, or caucuses? All right, final thoughts. Let's go around the table. Throw it out to Mr. Concha.
Okay. Kristen's right that Bernie Sanders has the message of I'm for the 99%. His problem will come where the big question is asked, how are you going to pay for it?
Is he ever going to answer it real quick?
Once he becomes the definitive front runner and he stands alone against Donald Trump, then the scrutiny comes. And when that comes, you got Walter Mondale on your hands, unfortunately, unless he takes like Mitt Romney as his running mate.
Oh, by the way, I tweeted out earlier before we go to Kristen on Final Thought that every time they mention Mitt Romney, they're just digging another political grave for him.
That's a good point, right?
Yeah.
Pierre de facto is his new name.
All right, Kristen, final thought.
I don't know that this debate changes a ton. You have folks in New Hampshire who are going to be voting early next week. This is a debate that was held on a Friday night in the midst of a really busy news week. So I am not convinced that anything we saw tonight was a blockbuster enough moment to really shake up this field. I think it's still Mayor Pete and Bernie Sanders going head-to-head for that top spot.
All right, so Joey, probably in bars around America where they playing drinking games, watching the debate.
Listen, I'm not a pollster. I learned a lot sitting beside you two. And I learned tonight that South Carolina is everyone's insurance policy. And so, my concern is where does this go? I don't know where it goes. I know that there are a lot of people that would like to see, probably on the conservative side, a brokered convention because I think there's a lot of opportunity there to attack someone. Maybe that's what
she's with you.
Hillary's waiting
do that
on.
again?
I asked Santa Claus for a brokered convention.
All right.
I talk
By the way, I
this on
said
What
this
Are the
months
Odds
ago for
all
the
the
record.
time.
I did as well because it's great for ratings.
The
drama you get around that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where does this go? This goes to a second term for Trump. Until something changes, that's where this goes. I do not believe Bernie Sanders can win this country with the agenda he pushes, and he's the one with the definitive message among the Democrats right now. It's not going to be Pete Buttigieg beating Trump. So unless someone steps in, a Michelle Obama or someone with a defined message and a lot of charisma, I see President Trump doing just fine.
All right. Well, guys, thank you. And ladies, of course, Joey, Kristen, and Joe Concha, just to put it all there. By the way, my take on this, folks, is that the impeachment, which is now over, round one, they'll probably come back with round two, is like a movie where you know the ending, and in the sequel, Donald Trump gets reelected. Thank you all for joining us tonight, and for all of you that aren't Fox Nation members yet, you should be soon. Head over to foxnation.com to sign up. You'll see all that great original content, a lot of documentary work. Watch Eric Shawn's special. Watch his when it comes to Who Killed Jimmy Hoffa. It's one of my favorites. Anytime, anywhere you can watch it on your Fox Nation app. Thank you all. Have a great night.